they became good people, and so that's really what we do. That's what we're in the process of trying to do in education, all of education, particularly rural education. I think we have an advantage because that's what we do. The communities typically look out for their kids. The village does raise the kids, and it's a cool thing to see.
Welcome to another episode of The Path Forward. As always, I'm your host, Dr. Rick Fernandez, where we talk about innovation, education, and the merging of the two. I have a special guest with me today, Mr. Bill Tarleton. He is the Executive Director of the Texas Rural Education Association. It's a mouthful, but Bill, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Rick. Thanks for having me.
Man, I've been wanting to have you on for quite some time. And as you and I kind of spoke offline a little bit, just for you to come and share a little bit of perspective of some of our smallest but brightest and most innovative Texas school districts. And I'm gonna try to say rural instead of rural, like I say oil. So you have to keep me honest throughout the show. But if you would, Bill, would you tell us a little bit about the organization and the mission of TREA?
Sure. The TREA started 32 years ago, so I guess almost 33. It started out as an advocacy organization, but we've become so much more. We provide, our mission is to provide benefits and services to school districts so that they can then in turn further student achievement. That's what we do. We have 400 districts in membership, and that's what we try to provide them with. And we do that in the form of advocacy, in the form of leadership. We have a board made up of superintendents. We have a legislative committee made of superintendents and assistant superintendents. And then sustainability. We just want to do what we can do to assist the school districts survive and thrive. And that's what we try to do, those three fronts. In terms of achieving our mission of providing those benefits and services to schools and it's ultimately students.
Excellent. Now, go ahead, Bill. Go ahead. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to cut you off.
I just wanted to point out we have in the 400 districts, we have almost 500,000 students. We have 76,000 employees and 35,000 teachers. So we those are real numbers to us, and those are the people that we serve and try to assist.
Now, I got to ask, how did you wind up, kind of overseeing, leading this organization? Was it just something you wanted to do, or just give us a little bit about your history as well?
Well, I mean, I started out as a special ed teacher in 1981. I've been a career educator, been a principal superintendent, worked in a regional service center as special ed director and field service agent. So it's something that I've done. And I've been associated with TREA in one way or another as a superintendent since the 07-08 school year. And then this, the executive directorship came open 6 years ago, about 7 actually, but I applied for that. And I took over from a gentleman who had done it a long time, and it was great. His name was Dr. Don Rogers. And he did not retire until he was at the ripe young age of 85. I don't know that I'll be doing that, but that's kind of how I got into it. It's just an organization that I've loved. I've been a part of for several years now, in one way or another, and it's just a great organization that it's a big family of schools that just try to do what's best for kids.
Excellent. And so you mentioned, as you were sharing a little bit about the mission and vision, you mentioned legislative advocacy, some of those things. And as you well know, big legislative session for education that just happened and is probably going to continue on depending on special sessions. But I wanted to get your thoughts. Are there any bills out there that directly impact school districts, but more to the point, some of our rural school districts and any unintended impacts where, hey, this seems like a good idea, but maybe not the insight to know exactly how that affects the folks that you guys are serving?
So, that's absolutely true. There are legislation does affect us, and this session probably as much or more than ever. Our first legislative priority is local control. That took a hit this session in terms of local control. That if there was, and as always, what happens is a lot of laws are made because something happened, typically in a larger school, and so we're going to correct it by applying it to all schools. And it doesn't apply to us, but we have to follow the rule and the laws. So, an example of that would be the cell phone bill. That's it's kind of how they did it is, it's just closing the barn door after the horse is out because kids have the freedom of using their phones, and now all of a sudden they can't even take them to school. So um, I, we communicated all this with our superintendents. Well, one
Sure.
came back and said, we've had a ban on cell phones for 7 years. We're good. So a lot of the schools, the small schools, small rural schools, they're going to handle this. They already have been handling it. They'll have to handle it a little differently, but it does affect us a little different than it does the larger schools. And as far as unintended consequences, a really good example of that slipped by everybody is called House Bill 210, and it is signed into law, and it means that school board members can't do some sort of business, which we're not real sure yet if that means contracts or just regular business, within the second degree of nepotism laws. So in other words, if an adult board member dad has a hardware store, and the ag teacher gets supplies from there, we're that if you read the law exactly the way it's intended or said, they have to resign. That board member has to resign, and in order to do business locally, as opposed to going 80 miles or wherever it might be to get your ag supplies. So that's something that affects us, and the author did not intend it that way. It
Right.
was intended for larger districts that were violating nepotism laws and doing large contracts, and that's what it was intended for. But the way it got written and passed affects us adversely.
So if I'm going to try to play forecaster here, you could imagine that if that law goes into effect and you've actually increased the burden on some of our rural districts, not only in cost, but probably in time of when they can receive, certain goods, certain services. So you have maybe made the work exponentially more difficult and made the cost kind of go up and unintended. These factors could significantly make it real tough for our rural districts to get what they need when they need it. Am I accurate in that a little bit, or am I overreaching?
No, you're not overreaching. In fact, you may be underreaching a little bit. You're spot on, and a lot of those you have to understand. These board members, they want their school to be successful, and their families want the boards to be successful, and the schools to be successful. They actually are going to. They're probably cutting the school districts a better deal than they would anybody else because that's their school district. And so now you're going to exactly what you said. Now they're going to have to go somewhere else and pay a higher price for those goods and services.
Man, that's
Absolutely, you're right.
That's tough, and I've got legislators on both sides of the aisle, very very good. I feel like well-intended folks, and then sometimes if you don't get enough of the information, you end up making some decisions that really could hurt our public educators, and not only hurt that, but hurt businesses that serve those public educators. So that's a great point, and I don't think that is you know front and center with some of our legislators of not just impact to big districts but all districts. So I appreciate you sharing your thoughts on that. um, when you think about our legislators in this session, is there one piece that you pull out that you think, all right, this is the most impactful thing that happened during this session? If somebody was off the street was going to ask you, like, what do I need to know? What's the thing that you pulled out from this session?
Well, the the fact that the vouchers, did pass, and some of our rural Republicans, got primaried out as a result of that. That was unfortunate, and that was big, a lot of that goes back to, you know, schools are failing, so we got to do something. Well, no, they're not. They're not looking at the same schools I'm looking at. We're not failing at all. But it happened. That is what it is, and it definitely will have an impact on all school districts, all public school districts. And the finance bill was big. The finance bill had a small schools adjustment raise in it. Didn't have a basic allotment raised in it, but it had helped small schools, helped teachers tremendously. So that's good. And but I think in answer to your question, the main one would have been House Bill 4. We had an opportunity, and we had one of our legislative our legislative chairman was on a committee to help formulate House Bill 4 originally in its original form. And that was to do away with the STAR test. And it was to go to norm reference tests, which are already available and they're nationally normed. So you can compare your student results to, other districts as well as other states, which is important. And you can do that with that third test. You would still do 3 tests, beginning of the year, mid-year, and at the end of the year. And you would take that third one, and that would be what you would use for the accountability ratings.
Mm-hmm.
But instead, what we're getting is, you're going to hear that we're getting rid of the STAR, and that is true. But you're also replacing them with 3 criterion reference tests that are going to be very similar to STAR. So you really have 3 of the STAR tests administrations instead of 1. And it's still criterion reference based on just Texas standards instead of developmentally appropriate activities or skills for each grade level and each subject, in my opinion. And I am, for what it's worth, I'm a diagnostician as well. I was a special ed director, and I know a little bit about this, and I don't, by the time this recording comes out, I can tell you that you're probably going to have a bill that passes. The House is going to be in line with the Senate. Senate is the ones that want these 3 STAR tests, or what I'm calling redefined STAR tests. They won't call them that. So that's probably going to happen, and that's something that we'll deal with. It won't happen until next school year, but it's one of those things that we were so close to getting it done right for kids, as opposed to right for the politics of it. And it's just huge to me. I mean, you have 5.5 million kids. Nobody wants the STAR test the way it's been done, rightly so, because it could be done so much better by doing through-year meaningful assessments. Remember, you can get those results back from norm reference tests, the MAPS, or some I read, either different ones. You get your results back within 24 to 48 hours. The STAR test, we're just now getting some of that released from
autopsy. We're getting autopsy.
Exactly. So I think that was probably the biggest,
Yep.
biggest
I would agree.
with all of our kids.
I would agree, because that will immediately shift how we do testing and shift resources, shift time devoted to other things. So a massive change for our districts that will be coming shortly, as you said. Now, one thing I love about our rural districts, our smaller schools, is when this stuff happens, is nothing new, right? Like, you've got some of the most creative, innovative. You mentioned earlier as a family. Just talk a little bit about how our smaller districts work together, innovate together, and really take whatever challenge comes at them and figure out a way through it, like together as a family, if you don't mind.
Yeah, no, no problem. One way educationally is things like the Rural Schools Innovation Zone. We have one of those in South Texas, and that's something that you combine career tech together, local businesses and communities together, and provide services to several schools at one time, for sure. But you mentioned times of need. We've got them all the time. We just had them with the floods, and we had them going back to the West Fertilizer Plant explosion, and then we had the Panhandle fires last year. You have tornadoes invariably that affect some of our small schools from time to time. And I'll just give the floods as an example. And what did we do? How did we handle that? Well, I have a contact who has a contact who has a contact, and we wound up helping the Ministerial Alliance out of San Saba. And the thing is, we learned from the West fertilizer plant, some of these other things. People well-meaning will send a lot of things that there's no place to store them for one, and they may not be needed. So we've learned to focus what is needed for a specific situation, and that's what we do. And once I found that out, I sent email to all 400 of our superintendents, and they had those targeted items, and they were taking those targeted items to San Saba and not Kerrville. Why? Because Kerrville at that point had a lot of resources available to them. San Saba had over 100 homes in that community that were destroyed, and they needed people and supplies to get them out. One of the supplies they asked for were boxes. One of our districts, Maypearl ISD, worked with the church and transported hundreds of these heavy duty boxes that they had used to move from campus to campus. As you know, that happens from time to time. Well, they saved their boxes, thank goodness. And so, that's a small example, but the thing is, it was targeted assistance to those people. And then we had, volunteers from the different schools as a result of those emails go and assist with those efforts. So that's how we do it. And the 30,000 view is whenever something does happen, we all rally. We will all help each other. We won't necessarily make the news, but that's not why we're doing it. And small communities take care of themselves. They take care of each other, other small communities. And it is a cool thing to see. I give the West Fertilizer Plant as a explosion as an example. I lived there. I was a first responder to it. I worked at the service center, and I was their field service agent. So for 2 weeks, we worked with them several weeks, but I mean, intensely for 2 weeks. But when you take the fact that a school loses all of its buses, all but one of its campuses on a Wednesday night, and Monday morning they're back in brick and mortar schools at a neighboring district, that just says everything to me, that they came back, they needed to be back in school, they got back in school. Some of those administrators and teachers lost their own houses, but the community and the communities around there rallied to do what was needed. And you go back to the current legislative, there's some things that really we would like to have seen different, but we will figure it out. We'll work within the confines of the laws and the rules, and we'll do what's best for our kids.
That's awesome. I love that you're sharing the fertilizer instance offline with me, man, and that just like brings a smile to my face just thinking about the ability to mobilize and get your folks where you need in that short amount of time. I mean, I was telling you, like, if it gets down to 32 degrees, we may be out for a week of school here in Houston. So we need to take a little lesson from you guys of how to make some stuff happen, because we'll shut down. Everything will shut down here if it's like 32 and a half degrees. So that's great to hear that story. What would you say this school year and on the horizon, one or two big challenges that your rural schools are going to face here in Texas?
Well, like all schools, but particularly it hits rural schools a little more in terms of a teacher shortage.
Yeah.
It's really hard for some, districts because of the geography of it or the pay. We typically don't pay as much. The new bill will help that for sure. But I would say that, and we haven't talked about it a lot, but we partner with over 70 association sponsors, businesses. We have some other nonprofits we work with to provide what we need to those districts. So one of those is Teachworthy, and Teachworthy helps work with school districts to grow your own, essentially, and help get some of your paraprofessionals or your parents or whoever certified, get the degree and certification that they need to teach. And so that's really a positive program. A lot of our sponsors will help, and that's just one example of one area of the
Yep.
sponsors we have. But that is one that it's needed, it's necessary, and they do a good job.
That's awesome. Yeah, no, that's, I mean, I can't imagine, trying to find teachers when you're populace is not, as robust as you would like it. You're trying to really scour, I'm sure, the community, the county, and anywhere else to find great folks to put in front of your kids. So
Yeah,
that's
and a lot
awesome.
of times
If
they're
you,
right there. They live
yeah,
in your community, and it's a way to grow your own, and they're likely going to stay. You know.
that's right. That's absolutely right. As you're thinking about the needs of your colleagues in your rural districts, what are some asks? Like if you had an ask from industry or a partner, what are some things that people could do to pour in and support you, the organization, and if they live in a rural district, one of their local district?
It would be great if legislators, parents, community members, businesses could see, and unfortunately you have to make a little effort to see it. But if they could see all of the cool things going on in our small and rural schools and all schools, but you just think about all of the ag projects, the ag academic type contests that they do. These kids are going to state, national on that. You got UIL academic, you have UIL sports, and remember, they only get to do all those extra things if they're passing their classes. So they're successful and then successful in these other endeavors as well. I wish everybody could see that and look at that. Unfortunately, we're too busy making those good things happen, and we just don't have PR departments. We just don't. We have social media, and it helps, but we just don't have it. An example is a young lady named Ryan Phillips graduated from Borden County High School 3 years ago, I believe it was. Very good in academics, and she was on the shooting team. Well, she went to the Olympics last year. She represented the United States in the Olympics trap and skeet shooting. That's just an example. She's not the only one. There's example upon example of successful kids that have gone and done things in the world and in the state and the nation and the world because they have that grounded. They were in FFA. They were in UIL. They became good people, and so that's really what we do. That's what we're in the process of trying to do in education, all of education, but particularly rural education. I think we have an advantage because that's what we do. The communities typically look out for their kids, and it does. The village does raise the kids, and it's a cool thing to see.
I want to ask this last one, and I know I've kept you long enough, but I really believe that from a leadership standpoint, working in a smaller district, you're exposed sometimes out of necessity to so many things that make a school district run efficiently, that make your academics go, your finances. Would you say, from a leadership perspective, that it's a great opportunity to see the entirety of how a district works, right? And sometimes we think in terms of size is a better opportunity. But wow, some of the leaders at our rural districts know how to do it all because they've had to do it all. Would you agree with that? And would you talk a little bit about your experience of the ability to learn so much when you're having to do where you have to wear all those hats? I guess the best way to put it.
Yeah, so it's pretty simple. The job of a superintendent is to manage the fiscal and human resources in order to improve student achievement. And that covers everything. That covers the business, the managing HR, that does everything. Small school superintendents really don't get the credit they deserve because they have to know how to fill out those transportation reports that nobody else is there to do it. They have to do those. Those are important. You got to do them 2 times a year. They have to know, what's going to happen in the cafeteria audit. Those things are tough. And they're going to have them, and they have various different types of audits, and they don't know how to do any of those unless they know how to do those. And they need to help get the kids out of the car and into the school. They do everything to a degree, and so they learn all of that, and they don't. Uh, it's. I'm not saying the large school superintendents don't, because they do, and some of them. But you have to understand, some of them started in small schools. I know an example of one that started in a school, a superintendent of 850 kids. That was maybe 10 years ago, 10, 11 years ago. And now he is superintendent of a district that has 110,000 kids. And he does it in a calm, cool, and collected fashion because he started from the ground up, and he does that. So, and there's other examples besides him, but that's kind of, I think it is a great way to be, to learn leadership, is to be in a smaller school. And if you have that desire to go to the larger schools, you're going to have that capability, because it's the same job description at Abbott ISD as it is Houston ISD. The superintendent manages the human and physical resources in order to improve student achievement, and it's the same one. But I think that Abbott superintendent has a leg up on some of the others because he's done all of those.
That's right. He doesn't have the same blind spots that maybe some other folks have, that don't get the opportunity to see every aspect and make sure you can do most of the aspects of just making the district run well. Yeah, it's nothing like don't pay. If you don't pay those referees, man, they don't show up for your games. So that'll get you in trouble. You got to make sure you do that. Well, Bill, man, it's been a pleasure talking to you. And like you said, I would love to help not only spread the message of the support of what you're doing and TREA, but also to help some of our rural districts publicize, get the good news out there, because they are doing some unbelievable, innovative, and some of the grittiest folks that you'll ever meet that just know how to get stuff done when the unexpected happens, man. And that's, I love that about Texas. Honestly, I feel like, all of us figure out a way, but when we're talking K-12, I think our rural folks do it the best, man. So just thank you for your time and your patience with me and just sharing a little bit about the organization. And I want to have you back on next time we're at a conference. You got to come person to person so we can chat and catch up a little bit.
Let's do it. Thanks again, Rick, for having me. I appreciate it.
You got it. And if you like what you heard and saw, please subscribe, hit that like button, share with friends, and we'll see you next time on The Path Forward.